Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 6th International Forum on Long-Term Energy Scenarios for the Clean Energy Transition. I'm Ellipse Rath from the IRENA Innovation Technology Center in Bonn, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies for the next 2 days. This forum has been organized as part of the flagship activities of the Global Network on Long-Term Energy Scenarios, which I will refer to as the Global LTES Network. The forum's objective is to explore 3 key areas of the global LTES network: to share innovative approaches, to discuss policy frameworks, and to explore strategies for developing energy scenarios that promotes a global shift to a sustainable and efficient energy system. I would also like to recognize our virtual participants joining us online. After the opening remarks, I will share some housekeeping information for both our in-person and virtual participants. The opening session includes welcome remarks from IRENA and from the LTES initiative lead countries and partners. The session will establish a common framing on current challenges to public and political support for the transition and confirm cross-cutting priorities that will guide the forum. We will now begin with welcome remarks from Norela Constantinescu, Acting Director of the IRENA Innovation and Technology Center. Norela is unable to be with us due to council in Abu Dhabi, our headquarters. However, she has kindly recorded a short message for you. Over to Norela. Kindly please play the recorded message for us.
Constantinescu, and I am the Acting Director of IRENA Innovation and Technology Center. First of all, welcome to our office here in Bonn and to the 6th edition of International Long-Term Energy Scenario Forum. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you these 2 days, but I hope that this 6th edition of LTS Forum will mark a step change. And why I am saying that I hope that in addition to the knowledge sharing and capacity building activity, the forum agenda will address also the implementation and support to project measures, as well as the use of innovations such as artificial intelligence and digital tools for energy modeling and planning process. Therefore, the agenda we proposed is structured around 4 critical questions that identify the frontier of effective policy relevant scenario work. First, the question of institutional integration. The session 1, co-hosted with our colleagues here in Bonn, UNFCCC, will focus on practical challenges of aligning scenarios with national determined contributions and critically with national budget processes. Second, the question of investment mobilization. Session 2, co-hosted with Brazil, our COP30 presidency this year, and the initiator of the Global Coalition for Energy Planning, will address this by examining how to turn grid expansion plans into bankable pipeline of projects. Third, the question of public and political legitimacy. The sessions 3 and 4 will investigate how to translate scenarios into tangible benefits such as job creation and security, and how to address institutional consideration for adopting transparent open source modeling tools. And fourth, the question of scenario resilience. The session on day 2 will examine the systemic risks through supply chain uncertainties discussion during the session 5, which we co-organize with the European Commission GRC, and address demand shifts driven by digitalization and use of AI, which will be the focus of session 6. LTS network continues to mature from a knowledge platform to a strategic coalition of planning, helping countries to connect vision, investment, and resilience into single national strategy. So welcome to Bonn, and I hope and look forward to have fruitful discussions. Thank you very much for your attention.
This week is just insane. We have the IRENA Council, there is a meeting in Singapore with the IEA, there is the assembly of ISA around the world. So I'm very happy to welcome you here in Bonn. And thank to our director, Norela Constantinescu, for her powerful remarks to frame the intellectual challenge before us today and tomorrow in Bonn. My name is Simon Benmeros. I'm the head of energy planning at IRENA. And today my role is a bit simpler and also more personal to welcome you for the LTS forum. We are today gathering a practitioner. You are living the challenges that we're going to discuss every day. And it is also very good to see you in person in Bonn. We recognize the value in the age of virtual meetings, but also we believe that to tackle the difficult problem, face-to-face meetings are not replaceable. The director spoke of a shift in landscapes. You probably are acutely aware. And we see it, of course, in the headline, the volatility of energy market across the world, and also the urgency, it was mentioned, of climate goals. And also more emphasis on the topic of fairness and affordability. And this reality brings a sobering weight on what we are doing here and also the outcome of this forum. The scenario we build become the architecture of decisions that will impact millions of lives, shape national economies, and also determine the future resilience of a lot of economies for decades to come. And this is a deep and serious responsibility we aim to tackle in our discussion today. Yes, we can hear you. Yes. And this is also where, personally, I found the inspiration for this agenda set throughout today. The most valuable resource is already here. This is collective experience, the scar tissue of expertise, and also the immense role you're playing in all your respective organizations and countries. Inspiration from our community emerged from the rigor of a shared problem. It is found in the exchanges between during the coffee break between peers who understand the immense difficulty of turning a sound model into a politically viable, financially attractive, and socially just plan. The director laid the core question of this forum. These are not academic questions for a panel to discuss. They are the daily substance of your work. How do we get the finance ministry to trust our numbers? How do you model for a technology that is barely commercial but could dominate in the next decades? How do you explain the trade-off to a public rightly concerned about the energy bills? My request to you over the next 2 days is quite simple. Be candid. Share the assumption that fail as readily as the solution that work. Ask the question that remain unanswered. The ultimate purpose of the LTS network is to provide the space for collective problem solving as we face this immense challenge together. I'd like first, obviously, to thank the organizing team, Juan Jose Garcia, Nadim Goussou, and Wangu there for the immense preparation for this forum. I also like to thank also the support team of the IRENA Innovation and Technology Center for supporting this event across now its 6th iteration. With that, it's my sincere pleasure to officially open this forum. Welcome, the work begins now.
Thank you, Simon. So now we will hear from Lars Georg Jensen, Chief Advisor in the Danish Energy Agency Center for Global Cooperation, part of the Danish Ministry of Climate, Energy and Utilities. He has previously served as Chief Advisor in the agency's Center for Systems Analysis, where he was chief editor of publications including the Danish Energy Outlook, the Danish Climate and Energy Outlook, and Denmark's Global Climate Impact Global Report. Since 2023, he had served as vice chair and acting chair of the Standing Group on Long-Term Cooperation and has also led 7 in-depth reviews of member countries' energy policies. Please welcome Lars Georg.
Oops, sorry. Good morning, everyone. Sorry if I look a little bit confused. I just spent 20 minutes trying to make my computer work. You know how it feels, right? And I did not succeed. My role here is to welcome you, and I'm very pleased to do that. So I would like to start by saying, distinguished guests, energy planners, scenario practitioners, and researchers from around the world, it's my honor to offer some opening remarks on behalf of the Danish Energy Agency. Denmark is a strong supporter of IRENA, and we are proud to co-lead the long-term energy scenarios network. For me personally, it's also a comeback to IRENA and Germany after 17 years, because I was actually here in Germany last time dealing with IRENA 17 years ago when we talked about creating IRENA. And I haven't really been dealing with it since, but I have been, as was said, chief editor of some of our publications on scenarios, so it might actually be relevant anyway now, many years later. I would like to begin by extending the warmest regards from my agency and expressing Denmark's appreciation for the important work being done on long-term energy scenarios. It's my pleasure to welcome you here. Over the past 6 years, this forum and the LTS network have evolved into a vibrant community where governments, academia, technical institutions, and international organizations exchange knowledge and collaborate on energy scenarios. Our shared goal is to ensure that long-term energy scenarios play a central role in guiding the clean energy transition. The clean energy transition is not achieved overnight. All of us in this room know that. It requires deliberate planning, sustained commitment, lots of decisions. Recently, we've heard one major global player question whether we are in a transition at all. And Denmark's answer to that is quite clear. Yes, we are in a transition. We've been in a transition for decades, and we continue to be fully committed to it. Our reasons for being in an energy transition are clear. It addresses all dimensions of the energy trilemma, achieving affordable, sustainable, and secure supplies of energy. In other words, the energy transition is essential for addressing climate change. It makes sound economic sense, as renewables are now the cheapest source of new power, and it strengthens our energy security by reducing our dependence on imported fossil fuels. Denmark has a decades-long tradition of developing and applying long-term energy scenarios. In the 1970s, the incentive originated from the oil crisis and the need to improve energy security in a cost-efficient way. Since the early 1990s, mitigating climate change, as well as other environmental impacts, has become a key driver, and at the same time as addressing energy security, always addressing energy security at the same time. Today, long-term planning, coupled with an annual cycle for revising climate policies and emission targets, stands as a cornerstone of energy and climate policy planning in Denmark. Now, over the years, co-development of energy scenarios and energy models in cooperation between implementing agencies, universities, think tanks, and other stakeholders has supported the creation of solid and comprehensive tools for policymaking. Let me highlight 2 examples. I hope for my country, but I know they exist elsewhere as well. Denmark's climate status and outlook report, first one. It provides an annual assessment of Denmark's greenhouse gas emissions and a forward-looking projection based on current policies. Mandated by the Danish Climate Act, so it's in law, it's a legal obligation. It serves as a transparent, evidence-based benchmark showing where Denmark stands and what remains to be done. Modeling is conducted in-house within the Danish Energy Agency, using detailed energy system models covering energy demand, supply, emissions, and socioeconomic assessments. This in-house capacity developed over decades ensures consistency across climate projections, sector strategies, and infrastructure planning, and reflects Denmark's long tradition of data-driven, transparent policymaking. Second, I would like to mention another scenario we're doing, which is not so well known. It's called the Analysis Assumptions for the Transmission System Operator. It's a terrible title. I'm sorry about that. It's a set of yearly published long-term assumptions that the Danish Energy Agency provides to our TSO, a TSO called Energinet, outlining the trajectories for electricity, gas, and hydrogen systems up to 2050. This report is published openly to encourage dialogue and scrutiny and underpins Energinet, the TSO's investment and infrastructure planning. So these are just two examples which illustrate how transparent modeling, consistent assumptions, and institutional coordination can turn long-term scenarios into practical policy tools. A topic at the heart of this forum. I know there are lots of other examples out there, and I'm sure we're going to hear about that over the next 2 days. Because although we share objectives on climate and energy, all countries have different backgrounds, different history, different natural resources, different economic opportunities, in short, different national circumstances. But we're here because what unites us is much more important than what differentiates us. Now, looking ahead, this forum offers a unique opportunity to explore how we can strengthen our institutional alignment, mobilize investment, enhance transparency and participation in scenario development, and ensure that our long-term energy pathways remain resilient, inclusive, and responsive to emerging challenges. As we begin this forum, I encourage you all to engage fully in the discussions. Share your insights, explore new ideas. Let's use this time to deepen our understanding, strengthen our collaborations, and build the foundations for a cleaner, more secure energy future. Lastly, I would like to thank IRENA for organizing this forum with such an important agenda and so many esteemed speakers. I wish us all a fruitful and inspiring 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. Our next speaker is Jean-François Garnier, head of the Clean Energy Ministerial Secretariat. Jean-François has over 20 years of experience across transportation, energy, and
I'm not sure if anyone can hear me, but I've lost the video feed from the room.
So, unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Let our Kindly let our IT team fix it. It's a bit muffled.
I can hear the feed, but I can't. There is no more video feed. I'm not sure if I'm the only one in that situation. Okay, so I'm not sure if people can hear me, but I've now gotten the video feedback. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Still very, very happy to be able to be welcoming everyone to this great workshop. The Clean Energy Ministerial is extremely proud of the partnership we have with IRENA in terms of supporting the work of the low carbon, the long-term energy scenario working group. It's been an ongoing partnership where the great need for long-term energy scenarios to support policy decisions has been brought forward to high-level political attention through a campaign that was jointly launched a few years back on the Clean Energy Ministerial. And then the success of that campaign and its outcomes was then turned into a much more detailed group that is now meeting every year. So extremely happy with the level of political attention that the importance of long-term energy planning and being able to make decisions based on a thorough systems understanding of the objectives and the challenges that we need to address, and how that helps build credibility, both in terms of financial institutions, but also social acceptance. And so we're also extremely proud during last year's G20, which was also co-organized with the Clean Energy Ministerial, that Brazil brought an extremely high level of attention and launched the GCEP, and extremely happy for IRENA's leadership in that respect. And so what we have been trying to do from the Clean Energy Ministerial's perspective, and thank you very much to Denmark and Germany for their leadership in terms of linking the IRENA work to the SEM work, is really to maintain that high-level attention to how energy planning can address multiple aspects, and also linking different pieces of the energy systems transitions issues together. Whether we're talking about the need for plans to be coherent between climate, infrastructure, as well as energy, for investors to understand the opportunities in terms of supporting and investing into energy transitions plans, whether it's about planning for the right types of skills and the workforce needed to be able to enable long-term energy transitions goals, whether it's about getting social acceptance about the value and the opportunity for local communities in terms of new energy projects. And so we've been really, really working with trying to bring different stakeholders together to take the value of energy planning and see how it can support their own work and how they need to feed into energy plans. And we've been really, really appreciating the work that we've been able to do with LTES in that respect. Also very glad that to see even in this workshop there is some cross pollination of the work that is being done in other CEM work streams, such as our Empowering People's Initiative and the work they do on jobs and skills, and what is being addressed through LTES. So that, cross-sectoral collaboration is something that we're definitely very proud of and appreciate the partnership in this. We also appreciated the input that LTES brought to our Clean Energy Ministerial last month in Busan, where we were able to really demonstrate that multilateralism and international collaboration, sharing best practices, still has huge value, despite the new kind of geopolitical environment in which we work, where people may not all have the same goals, but they can still see the value of understanding how to achieve whatever shared goals they have to be able to advance much faster in terms of advancing their energy policy objectives. During that ministerial, we were able to achieve over 40 outcomes, many of them who are linked to the areas where LTES is being working and has been supporting. So extremely happy. And now we're working really to help bring some of these outcomes to other political fora. We were at the G20, being able to, again, bring some of the outcomes there. We will be at COP, again, collaborating, hopefully with IRENA on some of these aspects. We are able to support APEC and ASEAN. So really, that partnership about the detailed work that you will be addressing over the next few weeks to make sure that long-term energy planning can continue to get refined, continue to address more and more of the issues that need to be analyzed thoroughly and holistically to be able to implement energy transitions plans, and the work that we can do in terms of bringing that to higher level political attention and really demonstrate the power that the tools you are developing actually can bring to fast track clean energy transitions is where that relationship and collaboration has been amazing. And so we're looking very, very much forward to the outcomes of today's and tomorrow's workshop. Again, very thankful to IRENA, to Denmark, and to Germany to create that strong relationship between the SEM LTES initiative and the IRENA LTES network, and really look forward to continued support and collaboration in the weeks, months, and years to come. With that, thank you very much. Good luck, and thank you for all you're doing over the next 2 days.
The network. Perfect. Great. And I'd like to start to mentioning that some of the previous speakers already mentioned this, but the LTS network is coordinated by the IRENA and also is co-led by Denmark and Germany. It's a voluntary platform where the members and partners of this network exchange experiences as peers, discussing basically how the processes behind and the governance and institutionality behind the energy planning processes, how these institutions are basically developing their energy scenarios, what considerations are they taking to innovate or to improve the ways they are doing these scenarios. Also understanding what are the main uses these countries and partners are giving to these energy scenarios, and also how the countries are, let's say, creating the institutional capacities that are needed to develop and use this scenario for policy making. In this sense, the network currently, you can see a quick snapshot of the current membership. Currently, the network is composed of 33 countries and 16 technical partners. Some of them are here in this room. Some of them are joining us virtually. And this platform is basically composed of governmental institutions that are in charge of the energy planning processes or support, let's say, the ministries in terms of the long-term energy planning and the scenario development. And through sharing these experiences among them, we see the value of this network in terms of knowledge transfers as peers. So the idea here in this network is not that the global south will learn from the global north or so on, but basically to learn as peers. So for instance, a specific experience that or challenge that an African country is facing can be the same challenge that a Latin American country is also facing, but given the different contexts and realities in the region. So to learn, let's say, the core of the solutions. So these other, let's say, the different regions can adapt basically the solutions. So this is one of the richness of this network, and this is the way we have been operated over the last around 7 years. And maybe one important aspect, and I believe many of you already have seen this slide, maybe in different shape and colors and so on, but it's basically the way we frame the discussions in the LTS network, and let's say in a very high level, how the discussions during this forum will be framed. And yeah, and this is very important because we see very often that everyone have different understandings of what energy planning is. For some people, maybe energy planning is just about the models per se, or the technicalities of the exercise of the modeling part. Some other people might see maybe energy planning, let's say, more in a holistic way, more in that how they coordinate with other ministries and so on. So the way we usually frame the discussions in the LTS network follow this very simplified mental model. And the idea is that we see long-term energy scenarios as the strategic tools that very often are fed by energy modeling tools. So the outputs of these models or the modeling tools fed into the long-term energy scenarios. And we say sometimes because the scenarios can also be created, not necessarily over the basis of models and so on, but also over narratives and, let's say, overall hypotheses. But in essence, long-term energy scenarios are these tools that bring or captures inputs from tools, energy modeling, and then produce, let's say, key messages and inform policies. So in this sense, decision makers, policy makers can have, let's say, better criteria to make decisions, to establish a specific governmental interventions and so on, that are basically based on data, on, let's say, more scientific basis. And one aspect that is key, or that we have discovered that is actually key for this whole mental process, is the collaborative and participatory nature of the long-term energy scenario, or let's say the planning process per se, where we have seen the relevance of engaging with key stakeholders from the very beginning of the planning process or the modeling process and so. And this, let's say, engagement continues through the validation of the results and then the consultation of the policy measures and so on, and then a feedback loop and so on. So you will discuss this in detail in session number 3 with my colleagues. But yeah, and see, I believe this is the key mental model to have in mind during these 2 days, in terms that, yes, we might or might not touch upon modeling tools per se, but also what is behind these tools, right? So in terms of institutionality, governance, coordination, and capacities. Another important point to cover in the context of the LTS network and the LTS initiative is the priorities we give to topics. For those that are actually members and partners of the network, you might be aware that on a yearly basis, we made a survey. We explore what are the actual needs of this community of energy planners, what they actually need in their works, in their fields of work to discuss, to improve the way they do the scenarios or how they use it. So every year, since the very outset of this network, we have been running these priorities. So we have seen some evolution. So for instance, maybe at the beginning, there was more focus on engaging, let's say engaging more with the climate planning as well and so on. But now we see a small shift in terms of, okay, now we have to talk about maybe not too much on increasing ambition, which is still important, but maybe the discussion now focus also on implementation. So how these planning tools, these scenarios can actually support my country or my institution to implement specific plans, what is needed, how these scenarios can help me out to send a specific signal to investors, for instance, no, which is a key, let's say, enabler for implementation, but also in terms of coordination, in the policy coherence and so on. So we have seen this shift during the years, and this is just also a snapshot from this year priorities. And these are the priorities that we consider for developing each one of these two-day sessions, which will cover, of course, coordination, stakeholder engagement, financial strategies, or basically how scenarios can inform or send the correct signals for investments and so on. Communication of scenarios, you'll see participatory processes, strengthening capacities, and for sure, AI for energy planning. And also, we have a session on that. And of course, aspect of energy security, you'll see here, just transition, emerging technologies, and so on. So the idea of arranging this meeting is to respond to the actual needs of the memberships. So these discussions, let's say, we are not arranging the discussions just because we want to arrange them, but because they are actually useful and the membership is asking for it. So maybe just to give a sense of what the network, well, I believe you already have a sense of what we do. So we, in the network, we support the facilitation of these exchanges to cover all those priorities with the idea of gather knowledge, transfer knowledge, and make this knowledge available worldwide. So the discussions that we will have today and tomorrow will be on these, let's say, products, knowledge products that can be that can take the form of a report, can take the form of a website repository, as you will see later, and also to mention that as JF also mentioned, the LTS initiative network is not working in isolation. We have interaction with specific platforms globally. You see some there, yeah, the Cleaner Ministerial, G20 COP, of course, but we also have interaction with other initiatives. We will see in session number 2 and session number 8 these days. We're collaborating also with this other initiative, the Global Coalition for Energy Planning. And the idea is for this, let's say, collaboration is to find synergies to, let's say, maximize the impact that doing these partnerships and collaborations. And yes, as I mentioned, the information and knowledge we collect usually take forms of reports, sometimes repositories. This example here is the National Energy Planning Dashboard, and so on. And maybe one also important aspect, let's say that it's embedded in the nature of the network, is that there is no wrong answer here. Every country, every institution, every ministry actually has its own, let's say, background, its own, let's say, institutional setup, their own national goals and so on. So what is working in one country might or might not be working in other, but let's say there's some ideas there that can be adapted and, improve adjusted and absorbed. And so basically, there's no silver bullet here. So all the opinions or the perspective are welcome here. And just, I hope you enjoy these conversations, and thank you.
Thank you, Juan Jose. So over the next 2 days, we will hold 8 in-depth discussion sessions covering topics identified by our members and partners as priorities for the LTES development. Each session will feature expert presentations, followed by panel discussions and interactive Q&A sessions to encourage peer learning and exchange. We encourage all participants, both in person and online, to actively engage in the discussions to make the forum as interactive and as insightful as possible. So before we begin the sessions, a quick note on housekeeping. I'll be very, very quick. The exit, it's located at the front of the conference room at the bottom of the stairs. Please use this exit when leaving. To access the washrooms, please exit the conference room and then turn right just before the stairs leading to the exit. Go down the flight of stairs. The ladies' washroom is to the right and the gents to the left. All meals will be served in the foyer located to the right of the conference room, the same area where you had coffee this morning. Weather permitting, lunch may be set outside, but we will let you know like a few minutes earlier. The dinner event is Event Manufacture. Most likely we will go together, but I will also inform about the timing when we gather outside after the conference. Food and drinks are not allowed in this conference room. Water is okay. Refreshments, morning coffee, lunch, and afternoon breaks will be served in the foyer. I will let you know when it's time for lunch or the tea break. For participants in the room, please press the microphone button when you are speaking and turn it off after you're finished. Presenters, when using the clicker, please point towards the back of the room because we have our receivers there. Online participants, you're currently muted and should remain silent, remain so unless invited to speak during the interactive sessions. Please use Q&A feature to share your questions or reach out via email if you need assistance. And if you experience any technical issues, we have our team right here for any support that you need. Lastly, we have the QR codes here and here. So you can get the agenda for today's events and have like full bios of each of the speakers. So I would request you to kindly use the QR code and inform yourself about the next 2 days. Of course, I'm here to inform you before every session, and the moderators will also introduce the participants, but it's also nice to have a look and get to know who your fellow participants in this conference are. So with that, housekeeping rules, I think I took a bit longer than the quick 30 seconds I thought I would take. So now we will begin with session 1, long-term energy scenarios framework and NDC alignment in practice, which is co-hosted with UNFCCC, our technical partner. This session will explore how countries are using LTES frameworks to align with NDC or LT-LEDs in practice, focusing on real challenges faced by planning teams. To open the session, I would like to invite Simon Ben-Baraz, Head of Energy Planning at IRENA, to give some introductory remarks. Simon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ellipse. We're going to get better in time because we have a lot of discussion going. Happy to that we can start the first session. So moving from the conceptual aspects on the opening session to the institutional ones. We will here address the question of uptake. How do we ensure that analytical work translates into implementable policy? The context is both immediate in a matter of days. COP30 will kick off in Belém, but also critical. You'll hear about the result of the synthesis report and the outcome of the ambition sets on the NDC 3.0. The work we do here in long-term energy scenarios is moving from a technical exercise to a direct input to national commitments. The challenge, however, remains a persistent one, and we see that in the recent submissions. A technically robust scenario often fails to translate into policy, not because of its inherent quality, because of a disconnect in its institutional wiring. We are missing the connection with the decision-making cycles, both on the climate and energy ministries, but also we do not speak the language of finance ministries. The session is built on this clear premise. The ultimate test of a scenario relies on its ability to inform its national budget. It is here that we see that targets can become funded mandates. Our focus will be on the practical mechanism to bridge this gap. We'll examine the institutional arrangements, the interministerial committees, the planning calendars, and the specific budget hooks that make alignments a reality. To explore, we have structured this discussion in three parts. The first one are scene setting presentation from UNFCCC, GGGI, and IRENA. They'll provide the overarching context. We'll then hear from a panel of international partners who support country in their work, before turning to a panel of government practitioners from Spain and Guatemala, who will also share their on-the-ground experiences. The objective is to emerge from this session with a clear understanding of the institutional pathways that can lead from a well-designed scenario to a credible, funded, and ambitious energy and climate plan. Let us begin, and I'd like to invite our first speakers on the stage, the first setting presentation. This is my esteemed colleague, Carlos Ruiz from the UNFCCC. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Simon. Distinguished delegates, colleagues, and partners, on behalf of the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat, it is my honor to welcome you to session 1 of this 6th LTS forum. Together with IRENA, we put together a nice program for you, which we hope you find insightful. I would like to start by thanking IRENA for putting together this important event and for the continued cooperation on this and on other several work streams. This forum comes at a very timely moment. COP30 in Belém is just a couple of weeks away. And also coincidentally, the new NDC synthesis report was published just yesterday. This year's NDC synthesis report focuses on 64 new NDCs submitted by parties since January 2024, and which cover about 30% of total global emissions. And while this limited data set does not really allow us to draw any definitive conclusions, it does offer insights in terms of the progress being made and of the major challenges that lie ahead. The reports show some clear progress and some encouraging signs. Countries are now continuing to bend the emission curve further downward. And we can also see that the quality and the coverage of NDCs continue to improve. Nearly 90% of these new NDCs now include economy-wide targets. We see that they include more robust policy frameworks, greater alignment with long-term strategies, although still progress to be made in this front, and a growing emphasis on adaptation, on just transition, and on policy coherence. A considerable increase in ambition can be seen, particularly in terms of unconditional targets. But at the same time, the report also delivers a sobering message, which is, despite the increase in ambition, we are still not on track to achieve the temperature goals set in the Paris Agreement. This is no surprise, and this also aligns with the observations in terms of progress towards the GST energy goals. And it aligns also with IRENA's observations in this regard. And one of the things is that from the Secretariat, we hear from parties that they are already stretching their capacities and resources, and that it is getting increasingly difficult to increase the ambition in these NDCs. However, to change this to a positive note, we still see continued efforts to enhance ambition despite these challenges, either by expanding the scope of the targets or by adding new sectors and gases to the NDCs or by strengthening the alignment with long-term strategies. So I personally find this quite encouraging. I don't have much time left. I wanted to switch quickly to some of the work we've been doing this year and also give an overview of some of the challenges we've observed. Throughout this year, in collaboration with NDC Partnership, UNEP, UNDP, ESCAP and GIZ, we organized a series of regional events called NDC Clinics. And these events were meant to support countries in developing their NDCs and with their implementation. And they were concretely looking to improve coordination between the climate and finance ministries, basically sitting these officials from these two ministries together in the same room for a couple of days. Not sure what's happening. Sitting them together in this room for a couple of days and forcing them to talk about NDCs and ideally go over through the challenges, the differences, and at least come up with some actionable steps moving forwards. The clinic surfaced several persistent barriers, including outdated frameworks, which can hinder long-term climate action institutionalization, poor interministerial coordination, lack of skilled personnel, which then constrains effective planning, insufficient data, political instability, and limited private sector engagement. So these are some of the challenges we've observed and we've heard from our parties. And hopefully this can help also frame the discussions we will have over the next 2 days. But given these barriers, I think today's session is particularly relevant. The focus on aligning long-term energy scenarios with NDCs and LTLEDs and with financial planning goes to the heart of these challenges. Effective collaboration between energy, climate, and finance ministries is essential, not only for setting these targets, but also to ensure that these targets are coherent and that they are achievable. And so with that, I would like to close my remarks and thank you everyone again for being here and IRENA for the invitation. And I look forward to a productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Next, we will hear from Juan Jose Garcia, Program Officer at IRENA, who will share insights from the global LTES network. JJ, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you again. I have prepared some slides. Well, in the meantime, I can start, so it's fine. So yes, I just wanted to share some of the insights that over the years and these past discussions and dialogues on the LTS network, what we have seen as recurrent challenges between regions, countries, when it comes to align the energy planning or scenarios exercise to their climate, let's say, targets and climate ambition and climate plans. And what we discover basically among these different discussions, there were common challenges in the regions in this regard, and in terms of how to basically bring the ambition into actual implementation and align the planning exercise with NDCs or LTES. And we have seen, for instance, limited institutional and modeling capacities in planning teams. We have seen somehow fragmented responsibilities also across the energy and climate, well, in this case, also financial ministries, when it comes to priorities or maybe differences in visions. Also, the need of transparency, or data. Data has been one of the key challenges, very recursive challenges. When we talk about transparent data, availability of data, and also data that can be interoperable between teams, planning teams, climate teams, and so on. And perhaps the most important challenge we have seen is the absence of actually investment-ready planning frameworks that support to take the next step, from the plans. Okay, this is our target. This is what we want to achieve as country. How do get the investment or the financial that is needed for this? So with this in mind, the LTS has been carrying out a short analysis where we take around 60 national plans between LTLEDs, long-term long-emission strategies, and let's say plans that are based on energy scenarios, to understand how well aligned these are and try to get some insights of, okay, what the countries are doing to align those planning exercise, or what is happening, what's missing. So what we found basically is that, in a nutshell, there is a actual lack of coordination mechanisms between ministries. Sometimes planning teams, environmental or climate teams are not talking to each other. And of course, the ministries of finance are left behind this conversation sometimes. And also timing. Timing is quite important when it comes to the updating cycles of the planning tools. Sometimes the energy planning tools are updated, but the climate don't. So this create discrepancies when it comes to send specific policy signals. But maybe the most important one is basically the mechanisms of coordination, internal mechanism, whether it's a very formal mechanism, let's say a specific law, or let's say a more soft mechanism, an MOU between ministries or teams and so on. So this is basically what we have found so far in this analysis. And maybe just to finalize my intervention here, we also run some interviews with specific countries that have shown some good level of alignment between the planning instruments and the climate instruments. And you can see here some of the common enablers of this alignment that at the end can support in bringing the ambition to implementation. And we have seen, for instance, common analytical basis on overarching frameworks, as I mentioned, frameworks that, let's say, facilitate this coordination. Of course, modeling capacities. The modeling, I mean, base these plans on, let's say, scientific exercises is quite important. Also involving other institutions in terms of coordination, but also it was highlighted the strong political, let's say, interest of this. I mean, the decision makers have to have the will to create these synergies of coordination between governments. You can see here some of the flags of the countries who participated. So I hope this insight can support the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan Jose. And finally, we'll hear from Stelios Grafakos, Head of the European Office and Principal Economist at the Global Green Growth Institute. Stelios, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
I hope you cannot hear the background noise. Is the sound clear?
All good.
All good. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the organizers, to IRENA, for inviting me and GGI to share some perspectives, and particularly share a guide that we co-developed with GIZ on aligning NDCs and LTLEDs to accelerate global climate action. I'm really sorry that I cannot be there with you in person. When I saw the topic of the conference, I really thought that I should be there, but unfortunately this coincides with the GGGI's global flagship event that takes place at the same time in Seoul, South Korea. So just for those that are not very familiar with the Global Green Growth Institute, just to let you know that we have around 52 member countries that we support, and our staff are embedded in different ministries and governments. So we make sure that we act as the trusted advisors, hand in hand with the government officials and experts, to understand the needs, the gaps, and provide the necessary support is needed, particularly when it comes to planning, long-term low-emission development strategies, long-term energy strategies, NDCs, NAPs, green growth strategies, so on and so forth. Here, we are just highlighting the different countries where we support planning, climate action planning, including all those strategies and plans I mentioned before. And in 2025, I would like to say that including the current NDC revision cycle and the previous one, GGI will have supported more than 35 countries. So we, apart from the fact that we are embedded in ministries and we support the countries to develop their climate change plans and strategies, we also work like IRENA and also as part of this LTS network, we develop also knowledge products with partners. In that case, today I'm gonna share the guide that we developed with GIZ. We collect experiences and lessons learned from the countries we work. We distill, synthesize, and share as global flagships reports and guides where countries can also learn, and we exchange at the global fora with different partners. So here, just to let you know that there are few upcoming publications on incorporating macroeconomic and finance analysis in climate planning, and also how countries could learn from different models and tools to model the green transition. Now, jumping to the guides, I will just give you the snapshots. I have limited time to go through the guide, and here is the link for you if you want to visit the website and dive into the more details. So the first one, why do we think we need this guide? Why this guide can be utilized? What is the added value? So first of all, is a practical guide. Our main objective was that this guide will really be very practical and usable by our member and partner countries, by policymakers, by practitioners, because it provides a step-by-step approach guiding how countries, while they go through the process of NDCs and LTLEDs, could align them in practice. And by that, we mean that we provide guidance at each stage and step of the alignment, and countries, depending on the context, the needs, they could pick those that they fit in their needs, those that they can learn, those that they can improve their NDCs and LTLEDs alignment. In addition to that, this is useful for all countries, regardless of the stage of the LTLEDs development they are in. So this is applicable both for countries that they have developed LTLEDs, which is good because then they have the long-term strategy, long-term vision and targets that could steer NDC enhancement, but also for countries that they haven't developed yet an LTLEDs. Very importantly, it includes practice cases. So good examples from different countries for each step, for each stage of the alignment of NDCs and LTLEDs. So it compiles all these good practices that countries can learn from each other, can get inspiration from each other. What is the rationale, though? Why LTLEDs and NDC is alignment is very important, right? What are the benefits? Obviously, by aligning LTLEDs and NDCs, we are talking about more efficient processes, ensuring alignment between the two, making them more efficient, also more cost-effective and streamlined. This will decrease chances for duplication of work, making sure that the same institution guides and leads the same processes, the two processes, but also a team of experts, they work on both NDCs and LTLEDs, the same teams. In addition to that, by having a clear alignment between NDCs and LTLEDs, this shows the credibility of the climate planning of the country to mobilize climate finance. This gives really confidence to investors that the country is really committed to achieve those targets and therefore could easier leverage and mobilize climate finance and the so much needed private finance. In addition to that, by aligning NDCs and LTLEDs, we can make sure that the content of those two plans, so going beyond the processes, are also coherent and consistent, right? There are no contradictions between the two plans. They are based on common data sets, data sources. They are based on common and comparable modeling approaches, right? Of course, every time those could be improved, but overall, those should be also aligned. And lastly, very importantly, to avoid carbon locking. Sometimes in the short-term planning, we may decide to invest or prioritize technologies that they deliver short-term benefits, short-term emission reductions, right? But in the long term, because those are transition technologies, may not be so suitable to achieve net zero emissions. So avoiding carbon locking is one of the reasons why NDCs and LT-led alignment is important here. Very quickly, I'll go through the stages and steps. You can have the opportunity to dive in the document. So this covers and provides guidance for four stages. Stage one on the planning of the alignment, establishing a coordinated framework both for LT-LEDs and NDCs, ensuring a consolidated stakeholder engagement process that also is relevant for both LT-LEDs and NDCs. Full alignment of those, as I mentioned before, will maximize the efficiency and reduce costs. Also developing a clear long-term vision as a reference for future NDCs, more ambitious NDCs that they follow the trajectory of the long-term strategy, right? And of course, aligning policy planning for LT-LEDs and NDCs. The second stage is development. So in essence, aligning the practical and technical work, as mentioned before, on the modeling, having the same modeling team working on both NDCs and LT-LEDs. Of course, those will be sectoral teams. That's why the long-term energy strategies are particularly important here to address and support both NDC and LT-LEDs development. Having alignment of the scenarios, so NDC scenarios following the trajectory of long-term emission development strategy scenarios. Obviously, the alignment of the targets should be part of this stage, that the 2030, 2035 targets really gradually are leading to net zero emission targets or to the long-term targets that the countries are setting. And lastly, also to derive medium and short-term policies, actions, and measures that are aligned. Stage three on the implementation, very important. I think this is one of the topics, finance and budgeting and how to align with that. Alignment with financing and economic planning in both processes is very important in order to be able to lead from planning to financing and therefore implementation. Also addressing technology needs and capacity development.
Just if you can conclude your remarks so we can move to the first panel. Thank you very much.
Exactly. And lastly, establishing and harmonized systems for monitoring and evaluation that applies to both NDCs and LT-LEDs, and updating and revising together LT-LEDs and LT-LEDs as is possible. I have some country highlights here in those four stages that I will share the presentation and you can find there, but also those are extracts from the guide. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share this guide. And I would like to let you know that we have two upcoming guides, one on incorporating just transitions in LT-LEDs and another one, as mentioned before, on incorporating macroeconomic and finance in climate planning. Thank you so much again, and I wish you a fruitful continuation of the workshop.
Thank you, Stelios, for your presentation, also highlighting the role of aligning NDC and LT-LED. I think this scene setting presentation really puts those aspects really into perspective, both from the NDC and the support from the UNFCCC Secretariat, the work on aligning energy and climate on LTAS and LT-LEDs, and the work of aligning this work. I'd like to move directly to the first panel, there, aligning scenario, climate commitments, and finance in practice. And this is a test for our colleagues because this will be the first hybrid panel. I'd like to invite to the front Marcela Jaramillo, Executive Director of the 2050 Pathway, Mohamed Amin Tahavori, R&D Energy and Modeling Officer at Belgium Vito, Estefania Ardila, the Deputy Director and a non-phase of country engagement for the NDC Partnership, and online, please, Sebastian, if you can open your video so people can see you. Sebastian Sturl from DG NR of the European Commission. I like to obviously hear this panel is about international perspective and also how we can share good practices and lessons from works and also developments of NDCs, LTLETs, and the link also with the budgets processes. I'd like to start with the question for Marcela Jaramillo. Marcela, from your work, what would be the single prerequisites that the planning team must have in place for your work, your support to take hold effectively? In a sense, how do you prepare activities so this support becomes a part of the national planning exercise? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here. Already very aligned with a lot of the presentations that were already shared. So to give a little bit more of context on my answer to this question. So in the 2050 Pathways platform, we are an initiative that are dedicated to support countries in the development of the long-term low emission and climate resilient strategies as mandated or invited between the Paris Agreement, Article 4.19. So we are very kind of focused on that instrument as an element to contribute and help align also with NDCs. So when we are supporting countries in this endeavor, one element that is absolutely necessary is to really set up a process that is economy-wide, a process that is going to bring all the different sectors and actors to the table, and that has some clarity in terms of who is leading and how is this going to be co-designed and reviewed and approved over time. This is something that I think countries have been evolving over time. It hasn't been as ideally set up in all countries, but we have seen a great evolution in terms of the way countries are trying to tackle the many issues that were shared earlier in terms of the coordination between different ministries, the governance set up for these processes, and the objectives that they would like to achieve to the process. So for us, when we support in a country in the development of the long-term low emission strategy, is really how either from the beginning or through the process, this is going to really bring to the table all the sectors around a national-wide strategy.
Thank you, Marcela, for those remarks. Turning to Mohamed from the Belgian Center Vito, which collaborate with a number of countries, including in Africa there. My question will be, what type of specific supports have you, let's say, worked with countries to help countries overcoming the barrier of inter-government alignment and also making sure that they are able to have LTS output into their climate plan, for example?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. First of all, extremely happy to be here with all the panelists and specifically Sebastian. It's a pity that you're not here in presence. So for the last year specifically, I have been like, we were working quite closely with few governments to prepare their NDC and LTS. And I think the biggest challenge I observed, I have very limited experience, just few years of work, but a lack of clear mandates for the governments when it comes to NDC, specifically in Sub-Saharan Africa, is a big problem. NDCs and LTS are becoming a sort of tick in the box situation in many countries. And the whole process of the NDC cycles that start from planning and then going towards the feasibility analysis, implementation and monitoring is really wrapping up in few months of activities for the preparation of NDC. So for the last couple of years, we've been trying through multiple projects and initiatives to just change a little bit that mindset, making sure that planning is a very continuous process. You cannot just do everything in 6 months. And of course, data is a very important barrier in many countries. Now, NDCs are published. For many countries, others will come in a few months, but it's time to understand if the data we use are correct. How do we want to monitor that? And just ad hoc supports for 6 months or 7 months to prepare their NDCs or LTS is not really the solution. This whole process should be continuous, focusing on what is important, collecting data, building institutional synergies within the countries, because NDCs and LTS are not just energy sector. All the sectors are involved, and the harmonization of the effort is something that is basically bringing a lot of challenge. That mindset, that ecosystem, I think is a prerequisite for the countries. I keep talking about, I think, mostly sub-Saharan African countries. That's my expertise are. That ecosystem is missing, and we've been trying a lot to really bring that ecosystem of working closely together, stakeholder engagement, interministerial interactions, focusing on data, and this whole long-term process that makes sure NDCs, LTS, and energy scenarios are in line, and they can lead to more sensible scenarios for future that are not fancy scenarios, are implementable, and that can bring credibility in the next round for the countries. Keep in mind, we are talking about countries that financial resources are extremely limited. They're supposed to rely on a lot of climate-related financial tools that needs credibility in the future. So bad scenarios, bad NDCs can lead to situations where they cannot rely on sources, so make it very challenging for them to implement them.
Thank you, Mohammed. You mentioned, I think this is a very important aspect. If the NDC is difficult to implement, basically, country cannot really mobilize climate finance, and the conditional aspects remain conditional for the next period. You mentioned the role of ecosystem, and we have Stefania from NDC Partnership, perhaps the largest ecosystem to support countries to update, enhance, implement NDC, align them with the LTLEDs and develop LTLEDs. Could you tell us what are, in your experience, engaging countries and also the partners supporting countries, what will be the most frequent institutional barriers you observe when countries are trying to align the energy side, LTES, with the NDCs and the LTLEDs, so the climate side? Thank you.
Thank you, Simon, and good morning, everyone. It's really, really great to be here among so many esteemed colleagues. I think I'm just gonna echo what's been said in the presentations before. From our standpoint, and just by way of context, the NDC partnership is a coalition of over 200 members now. We have over 100 member countries, 100+ institutions working together towards getting NDCs developed with good quality, but also implemented. We're just wrapping up our instrument, which we launched in late 2022 to support countries in preparing their NDCs due 2025 as along LTLEDs. And that was a very deliberate feature and decision by design. And here, our colleagues from the 2050 Pathways and Marcela have been really instrumental in helping us support countries in finding the how and the what to produce that alignment. So in working with the partners and seeing what the countries are asking us, and in seeing how projects unfold and are implemented, I think that institutional coordination and the fragmentation of functions and responsibilities continues to be the biggest institutional barrier to achieve high ambitious outcomes, but also integration and efficiency into the processes. I also want to recognize that this is not only a situation or a gap that is persistent across many countries, but it's also quite admittedly a challenge that the way that cooperation is framed and provided is really not helping a lot in terms of aligning and in terms of fostering that institutional coordination. Just to give you an idea, with this initiative that we run for the past 3 years, the Global Call on NDCs 3.0 and LTLETs, we found out that on average, we had 5 partners supporting the preparation of NDCs and LTLETs in countries. So when you think about governments that have very limited capacities, interacting with these 5, 6, at times 10 institutions for some countries, coordinating and ensuring that all the teams and consultants working under each of those institutions are aligned, using the same templates, using the same assumptions. This is really a big challenge. So to close this remark, I think there is something that governments need to address and work through stronger institutional arrangements and clear mandates, as my colleague here from B2 said. So these processes are not a one-off, but really become a continuum and more or less regular practice within different government institutions, of course, not only ministries of environment, but there is also, I think, an important reflection for the providers of international support as to how can we think of more comprehensive packages, how can we think of more coordinated and programmatic approaches to deploying the support in a way that adds less, in terms of achieving that coordination with the consultants and the people who are at the end of the day providing this data and doing the work, because admittedly also the capacities of the government will probably take a long time to be there for them to fully absorb the tasks of modeling and so on. What I think is key and at the heart of beating this challenge together is really ensuring that we have clear rules, clear templates, clear processes and protocols where everybody, not only governments across themselves, but governments and partners work transparently and commit to transparent and open data sharing, open data flows, and open communication so that really these processes become more ambitious but also efficient.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very good examples. I would say standardizing templates, and so everyone can have access to those to also speak the same language there. You also mentioned the capacity of governments to actually operate these processes, and I think that's an excellent segue to Sebastian Stöll from DG ENER, the European Commission, probably running the most difficult exercise in the world with 27 countries colliding in one NDC. Obviously, also at a time of fragmentation, but also changing, for example, regarding the financial framework of the European Commission. Sebastian, I hope you can hear me, and my question will be probably a follow-up on the previous intervention. Regarding barrier in applying scenarios to actually policy decisions, what would be your experience regarding that, especially the linkage between scenario results that you are supporting with annual or medium-term budget, and especially interested to learn how the planning calendar of the European Commission use LTS outputs into the different documents, NDCs, and also vision for the commissions. Sebastian, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Simon. I hope you can hear me well. So thank you very much for allowing me to be on this panel virtually. Hopefully next time I can be in person in Bonn. And thank you for the question also. It's a tough question. I'll do my best to respond. Indeed, as you said, the fact that the European Union consists of 27 member states, each with their own national level challenges, priorities, resources, and opportunities, makes this a very intricate and long process. I'll try to walk you through it very quickly. Of course, the European Union has as a whole certain objectives on the medium term and long term. So, for example, emission targets, decarbonization targets, renewable targets, energy efficiency targets. Those are determined through a legislative process involving the European Commission, the European Council, as well as voting in the European Parliament. Once certain objectives are adopted, it is up to the member states to determine how best to be able to meet those objectives given national circumstances. So, for example, in terms of energy policy making, member countries are required to develop every so many years national energy and climate plans, or NECPs in abbreviation. So these are nationally determined documents which are supposed to describe how each member state tackles issues like decarbonization, energy efficiency, energy security, internal energy markets, as well as research, innovation, and competitiveness. So these NECPs, one for each of the 27 EU member states, have to be handed in every 5 years. That process is not just a simple sending of a document from a member state to the EU Commission. There is a feedback process where countries hand in draft plans, and then those are scrutinized in a review cycle by the Commission, looking at various elements such as clarity in, let's say, in the context of energy planning, clarity on modeling framework, alignment of data sources, investigation of sectoral impacts such as on countries' economies and so on, job creation, and so on and so forth. After that, countries are given more time, about a year roughly, to hand in, to take those comments into account and hand in final NECPs. After that, a new part or new phase starts in which the European Commission assesses and analyzes all the national member state level energy and climate plans in detail. And in collaboration with experts from the member states who were involved in drawing up the plans, so experts in ministries, in national agencies, as well as contractors, do their best to quantify the measures that the countries describe, so to get a quantitative overview of the policy package that the countries propose. And using that to construct from the bottom up, so at the level of each member state, and then aggregating to the EU level, a long-term energy model aligned with these national energy and climate plans. That model is then used to produce a scenario which we call the reference scenario. And just like the NECPs, this EU-wide reference scenario is produced once every 5 years. That creation of that scenario also involves, once again, review rounds with all the member states to ensure that their national preferences are best represented in those models. All these steps take a lot of time. So let's say that from the beginning of the NECP process, so the publication of guidelines for the updating of the national energy and climate plans, to the publication of a reference scenario approved by all the member states, we can easily span more than 3 years across that whole process. The reference scenario is not a prediction. It's very important to understand this. It's not a prediction. It's rather an evaluation of the appropriateness of nationally proposed policies for meeting EU-level targets. So that means the reference scenario does not necessarily meet the EU-level targets. We first need to assess what is the gap to meeting them, and then that reference scenario can be used as a basis for further, more ambitious scenarios, as well as policy elaboration. So it's really a basis for policy elaboration. So in that sense, the reference scenario forms a pillar of EU-level policy making, because it gives us a starting point for analyzing what the gap is to meeting climate and energy targets, and a basis for proposing more ambitious policies at the EU and the member state level. And in that way, it feeds into various other exercises as well, such as multi-annual financial frameworks, as well as the EU-wide NDC that the EU submits as one block to the UNFCCC. And this is a I have to really emphasize, this is a very intricate process, and the key here is the engagement of stakeholders, not only member states, of course, with whom we collaborate very, very closely, but also at various points throughout the process, stakeholders from industry as well as academia in the European Union, from whom we can learn more about, for example, new or innovative technologies that could play a role in the European Union's energy future. So this is a very long answer to a very broad question, but I hope it gives some insights, Simon.
I had I was sure you were going to have a very good answer, Sebastian, there on that. Thank you very much for the explaining the process involving the member states and how, I mean, contribution translate into the different plans, I would say, and looking also at the binding, I would say, agreement for 2040 that very soon from the statement of intent of the NDC will translate into the EU-wide NDC coming up. Sebastian, we're going to test your answer with the country perspective from Spain and also another country perspective from Guatemala there to explain a bit also their experiences, best practices in the development. And I like, before we move to the second panel, I like to invite to the stand Ms. Aurora Recio Gonzalez from the Ministry for the Ecological Transition and the Demographic Challenge of Spain to the stands. And also I'd like to thank very much the first panel for the interventions. You can take back your floor. Thank you very much.
So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the introduction and IRENA for the invitation. I'm pleased to attend this forum as a member of the network. And today, I want to briefly share Spain's experience in linking these long-term energy scenarios with our national energy and climate plans, and also how we are trying to connect this with real finance and investment decisions. Our ministry, Energy, the Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge Ministry, plays a key role in energy and climate planning, and we develop these short and medium and long-term strategies. And we analyze the market trends, collect statistical data to ensure alignment not only with international commitments but also with European commitments, and all while supporting this transition to a just and decarbonized energy system. So before moving into planning and scenarios, I wanted to start by highlighting that we believe in the opportunities that the ecological transitions offer. It's not only a necessity, but also is a source of competitiveness and growth for our country. And Spain, in particular, has a unique renewable potential with wind, plenty of wind and solar resources, and this provides a competitive advantage. and since 2021, this commitment has been elevated to a legal framework through our climate change law. And this sets long-term objectives and also ensure policy stability, which we think is key to investors and also to citizens. And without going into many figures, I want to highlight some of the main results of this belief in energy transition in the last years. For example, in 2024, last year, Spain led the European market for PPAs, delivering stable prices through contracts for several number of companies. And that same year, the last year, renewable exceeded 56% of the share of electricity production in our country. And this resulted in lower prices compared to other peer countries in the EU. Also, since 2020, more than 35 gigawatts of renewable capacity has been installed under market condition without public subsidies. This need to be highlighted. And talking about NECP that Sebastian from DG has been talking about, Spain has made strong commitments in our updated, last year updated NECP, and sets ambitious targets for 2030, so quite short term. For example, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 32% compared to 1990 levels. This is fully aligned with EU NDCs, the last submitted in 2 years ago, I think, to UN, in which the EU and its member states acting jointly committed to a legal binding reduction of at least 55% of emissions by the same year, by 2030. Another ambitious objective set in our NECP is increasing the share of renewables to 48% of the total energy consumption in our country, and 81% of the share in electricity generation. This is quite ambitious, but we are in a good way. And another main goal is to cut our energy dependence to 50%. So beyond 2030, we have our long-term energy strategy, adopted 5 years ago in 2020, and this strategy defines a climate neutrality by 2050. It includes detailed projects for all sectors like power, industry, buildings, transport, agriculture, and it shows a clear decline in a trend till 2050. This is key to highlight that the same analytical backbone used for the NECP lays on this long-term vision, and this I think this ensures a consistency between short and long-term goals. And we are currently updating this long-term strategy. We have already conducted a preliminary public consultation just to gather all the vision and the needs of the key sectors. And now we are working on the modeling, on the core, integrating these new technological assumptions like more recent advances in renewables, in hydrogen storage, also the new grid planning, among others. So this is the key element behind both plans, the NECP and the long-term strategy. And the key element is a robust energy system modeling. Spain uses an integrated set of models combining energy balances and also technology and economic modules that allows us to test policy interactions and also to ensure the design of cost-effective measures. This modeling is coordinated by our ministry, but it involves also interaction, collaboration with research institutes and public agencies in Spain. And this analysis is essential to support decision-making and to engage other ministries. Particularly difficult to engage the Ministry of Finance when assessing investment needs, but this analytical basis is needed for that. So this slide presents a summary of the core model, the time synergy model as our core model, and how different sectors interact, from resources through electricity generation, transformation, and to final energy consumption in the different sectors that I mentioned before, and also the emissions produced. As I said, we use this model in the short term to define the NECP scenario until 2030, and we use the same model to define the long-term scenario to 2050. And a key lesson learned here is the importance of institutional coordination. So between ministries and especially between environment, energy, transport, and finance, this coordination allows the results of the scenarios to inform budgeting and investment decisions. Also to manage funding programs, including including EU funds. This provides policy stability and encourages the mobilization of private investments. And we have still challenges, particularly in decarbonizing transport for us, modeling also new system interactions, storage, and the updated grid planning. But this process reinforces the dialogue between the different parts and ministries and planners, and provides a clear view of the benefits of the grid transition indeed. And just to conclude, Spain's experience shows that aligning these long-term scenarios, the NDCs, and also the green and the green budgeting planning is necessary. So it requires institutional collaboration all within Spain, but also international collaboration. The LTS network's objectives align closely with our our work. And let me finish by saying that we are eager to share and to work together to learn and from other peer countries and organizations. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aura, for your intervention. You can stay around because after the second presentation, we'll have a discussion with also the colleague from Guatemala and the colleague from 2050 Pathway. I'd like to invite to the stand the colleague from, I'd like to invite to the stand Mr. Gabriel Armando Velasquez from the Ministry of Energy and Mine of Guatemala.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you to IRENA and organizers. For the Guatemala government, it's a pleasure to present the sharing the experience of the NDC and the energy plan. I'm going to present the participatory process of national determined contribution of energy in Guatemala. Guatemala present its INDC in 2015, consolidating its commitment to the Paris Agreement. In the climate change law, the National Council on Climate Change coordinated the process with the government, institutions, universities, indigenous people after 2 years, the civil society, and the private sector. The president of Guatemala is the one who president over this. You can see the meeting of the this council. In energy policy, by 2030, the 80% of electricity generation will come from renewable sources. Incentives for development of renewable energy project. This is the law. You can see the law. And incentives, residential and commercial user with solar panel and distribution renewable generation. Thank you to the technical stand. You can see the technical stand in the presentation. And the implementation of the National Energy Plan has 3 axes. The first axis is renewable energy. The second axis is energy efficiency, and the greenhouse gas reduction. All the purposes goals have been met. Guatemala energy planning contributed to this achievement. The first national determination contribution in 2015. The first national determination contribution, NDC, is officially presented, defining concrete mitigation and adaptation goals in a strategic sector. The energy sector is strategic in Guatemala. Guatemala establishes a mitigation target to reduce the total greenhouse gas emission by 11.2% compared to last year in 2005, under the business as usual scenario and the conditional target to 22.6% by 2030. The second national determination contribution. You can see this participatory process is the first energy NDC in Guatemala to have this process. It's very difficult process. Support was provided by UNDP and the IBD. This process was led by the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Energy and Mines. This is a very interesting process. The government structure based of a space of discussion and validation of goals and measure, and the government institution, the private sector, and the academy and civil society participate. The step of the process: the first, the formulation of proposal, identification of goal and measure. The second, technical review, government teams and advisor commitments. The three, the sectoral validation, multisectoral roundtable. And the fourth, preparation of the draft, the NDC, driving and consolidation of the document. The fifth, a national validation, discrimination with key stakeholder and the president approved. And third, national determined contribution. In 2015, this year, it's very important that the process be participatory the government institution, the indigenous people. This is the first NDC that the indigenous people participate in this process. The private sector too, the academy and the civil society participate too. For example, the participatory technical workshop, listening to all the sectors. This topic is very important for the NDC. You can see the first meeting for the three NDC presentation with the other sector, and you can see all the sector in this picture. This is the second meeting for this NDC. You can see the first workshop, the NDC in August this year, for energy, 3 round tables. The first is renewable energy and access to clean energy. The second, the sustainable mobility, and the 3, energy efficiency. This is the second workshop. You can see the picture of the table in the University of Guatemala. And in this week is the 3 meeting for the preparate this new NDC. Conclusion and recommendation, bring together the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Environment. The political direction is very important. And 2, listen to all the sector. Listening is important for good result. And 3, it's easier for everyone to work together for a better work. Thank you so much. This is my business card if you need to talk next. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. You can actually stay. I'd like to also now invite Marcela to moderate the discussion with both Aurora and Gabriel on the experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're now going to have a conversation, so I will invite both Gabriel and Aurora, if you can both join us here at the front. Thank you. Okay. We also going to have another country experience that is going to be sharing the conversation. So Ali Ahmed Ali as well, if you can join us, thank you, from the Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy of Egypt. Thank you so much. So we have already heard a couple of experiences here from Spain and Guatemala, which are really quite useful in talking in some of the big challenges that we see in the countries, not only the coordination, but even more so the understanding of why do you need an LTS, long-term strategy, long-term energy planning, and NDCs. Like, what are all these strategies doing? What are their roles? How can they complement each other? Which is often also a barrier to be able to bring them together. And these examples were quite good on that direction. So to start a little bit more the conversation, I wanted to ask actually Gabriel, starting with Gabriel and the experience of Guatemala. We know that Guatemala has been very actively updating the NDC as well as the National Strategy for Low Carbon Development, the NDEB, as known in Spanish. And we know that the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Energy and Mines have been working quite close in this update of the 2 strategies. So we wanted to know a little bit more about how do you see it from the point of view of your planning calendar in the Ministry of Energy and Mines? At which point the inputs and the analysis that you do in the energy connect with the NDC and the LTLETs? And particularly, how has been the experience in the last year? Because they have different times. Some of them are done faster than the others. So it would be really good if you can share a little bit more of that ongoing experience in Guatemala.
Okay, thank you. Good question, but difficult question too. For example, when I work to energy planning, and update the NDC in three steps. Guatemala General Electricity Law, site to energy planning must be done every 2 years. This year we planned to 2050. The NDC has been updated to 5 years too. The Ministry, the Energy, and the Ministry of the Environment was together with two topic, the energy and energy planning and NDC. And the better example is the the National Energy Plan. For me, is the best example in Article 18 of the Climate Change Law. Say the Ministry of Energy and Mine, together with the Ministry of Environment and the Presidential Secretary, work this plan. And the other example are the energy policy and the energy efficiency policy. You can see in my presentation the participate round table. This for me that's all.
Thank you so much. And I think one continued message that we keep getting is having a climate law or something very similar that clarifies the role of who will be doing what part of the work is essential to facilitate coordination. So I want to now go to Aurora and and understand a little bit more on the experience on Spain. Particularly all the work that you've been doing, and you already were talking about how all these analyses from the sectors connect with investment planning, with budget planning. So the question will be, in the case of Spain, how has the experience of connecting the sectoral planning into the midterm budget processes occurring? What has been the experience?
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Interministerial coordination is essential. In my personal opinion, I think we developed the NECP internally in my department concretely, and it's better to let the other ministry be a part of the basis of the process. So bottom-up construction. So we have learned to let them participate in the very first development of the scenario, and also for example, the GDP assumptions, all the added value that is very detailed design in all these sectors. It's better to coordinate between ministerial bodies, also agencies, and so on, from the very first beginning of the process, just to smooth the path of the design of the budget, because it's a two-way collaboration. Also, as you said, the climate change law also in Spain sets a very important milestone. So we elevated this commitment to a law in 4 years ago, and it also is this collaboration. Concretely, in our Article 13, it speaks on about public resources dedicated to climate change actions. So there is an obligation about annual report to show how the budget is dedicated specifically in some specific points of the budget as allowances to climate change actions or renewable energy, but also mitigation and environmental actions. And I think this is very important. And to conclude, also, it's the monitoring systems are very, very important for us. Just to let us know if we are following the pathway that we have been designing. If we don't check periodically if we are in the good way or in the for meeting our goals, we don't know how to reconduct the situation, or to design additional measures, more ambitious measures, and also analyzing this monitoring and impact assessments. Thank you.
Thank you. And I like as well, you touched throughout the whole process. You started from like, okay, we're going to talk about budget. We need to take into account from the very beginning of the process how we set it up, how there is the climate law, but then how we monitor. So it's really a constant process. Mr. Ali Ahmed, I know I'm welcoming you into this panel, so feel free to add a little bit more context on the work in Egypt. But we know that the country has been doing a lot of work already for a long time on energy planning, but also connected with climate change. And I wanted to ask if you could share with us a little bit of that experience, and also to focus on what has been the most challenging barrier that you had in translating scenarios and energy analysis into policy, and how it has been overcome.
Thank you first for inviting me for this distinguished panel, and thanks for IRENA and the team and distinguished attendees. It started in Egypt with its vulnerability to climate change. Egypt is vulnerable because we have this good location with two seas, Mediterranean, and we look on the Red Sea also. And Egypt started to realize that new and renewable energies needs more efforts to be planned because we used to depend on fossil fuels. Maybe by 2008, fossil fuels were contributing by 99% of our energy system because we have this abundance of gas and oil resources. But this kind of looking for the future, we found that, of course, renewables shall become to the picture. And we started to cooperate with EU to develop our first renewable strategy and plan, which now will contribute to about 42% of our installed capacities. Egypt also has developed its first national climate change strategy in 2011. According to the discussions and the studies made in cooperation with our partners for the energy sector planning, led to that we need to have this kind of national climate change strategy. And we then, by 2018, developed the first low emission development strategy. This contributed to our next edition of the strategy in 2022, when Egypt hosted the COP27, and the strategy second edition was developed with a new vision for the NDCs that cover all the sectors in Egypt. So we have under this strategy now 5 main goals. The first one will contribute to the economic growth of the country and achieve it through renewables, plus enhancing climate change adaptation and resilience, and climate change governance and finance. Ministry of Finance, of course, started from the early beginning in contributing to these strategies and plans, because Egypt, in cooperation with EU and other partners like GIZ Germany and Danish Energy Agency, developed several programs in order to make these tools available, in order to feed the strategy with the tools with the needed information for developing these plans. Now we are working with the GIZ, like the high-level joint committee, to develop tools for NDCs monitoring, and we have the MRV system We have other platforms for energy efficiency. All these tools will feed the plans to accomplish our targets for climate change and even for the energy planning in Egypt.
Thank you so much. And it's interesting to also look at the experience, very focused on a toolkit, the different elements that you need to be able to take what the scenarios analysis are into actually policy that can be monitored and implemented. I wanted to ask a question actually to the three of you, and I think this is a question that probably will be part of the conversations that will happen later today, and is what policy or regulatory signal from the plans that you have been working on has given investors the more certainty or the most engagement into supporting the implementation of the NDC or the long-term strategy. So maybe we can start with Aurora here, and then we can go with Gabriel and Ali.
Thank you. In our case, I think it's not not only one or two specific tools like auctions or tariff grids, but it comes from Spain's ambition level on these long-term strategies, and also in our NECP shows compromise, a commitment with this kind of investments, and I think this is the key to mobilize to attract private investments. Also, for example, good part of being in the whole process of designing a scenario is also the impact assessment that we share with all the citizens or the public after finalizing the plans. So for example, in our updated NECP, in the chapter 4 is an impact assessment. It's a full chapter that shows the impact in GDP growth, also the impact in employment, added value, that this ambitious goal will attract till 2030. So I think this shows that investment opportunities come alongside the plan, and also the shared analytical basis between short and long-term strategies gives also a feeling and image of policy stability, because the goals are coherent, and there's a very good investment signal, and I think. Thank you.
Interesting question for Guatemala. I think three very important points. The first point is the generation and transmission build, the public and private tender with clean technical and financial rulers, help the companies to understand the risk and the plan their invest safely. The second is the general electricity law. It's a very strong and stable law for Guatemala. It's helped bring in investor and grow the country's electricity sector. And three, the regional electricity market lets Guatemala and sell electricity with other countries, for example, El Salvador, with Mexico, on the Honduras, on all the Central America.
Thank you. For Egypt, we started, as I told you, early with our development partners in order to develop our energy plans, and this went to developing a new act for electricity and renewables into 2015. This act encouraged more expansion of renewables and more integrating of energy plans with climate change actions that Egypt already need, because Egypt is vulnerable, although we are have like 0.01 of global emissions, and 65% of these percentages coming from electricity sector. So we pushed our system in order to have all the regulatory and facilitation for private sector and even public sector to work together. The Act allows not only the expansion of renewables, but taking other measures in other sectors in order to meet our climate change goals. One of the most important is the international cooperation with our partners. As I told before, also we have this cooperation with the Danish partner and German partner and EU. And this helped Egypt most in gathering all the sectors which were not involved before in energy planning and in climate change action. The law allowing the country now to not only expanding the renewables, but it made something like diversification of resources. And this law also helped Egypt to deep further in energy efficiency programs that allowed the country to get more contribution from private sector and tripling our capacities. For the coming 5 years, we are planning to have 42% of our renewables as part of as a share of renewables to the total energy mix. And you can imagine that Egypt now installed capacity is about 60 gigawatts, and we are planning to have at least 114 gigawatts from renewables added to this capacity. So a lot of work on laws, regulations, and even for cooperation with private sector and facilitating their contribution to the market in Egypt are ongoing for them. Thank you.
Thank you. So law, regulation, targets, policy coherence, and the design of policy instruments or investments like the public tenders align with the policies. We have 5 minutes left, and I want to give the option to have 1 or 2 questions from all of you that have been quietly listening to all this morning. So I don't know if anyone has 1 question that would like to share or ask to the panelists before we close. I can see 1 at the back. I don't know if we have, you have the mic.
Yeah, thank you very much for the interventions. My name is Vangelos from Pulsar Institute, Switzerland. And my question is, all these national climate and energy plans suggest instruments and they evaluate these instruments, but with modeling frameworks that are having an ex-ante implementation of the policies. So what measures do you take to monitor these policies? Do you run ex-post surveys? What tool you have at your disposal in order to correct also policy failures related to market failures or behavioral failures? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think some of you already talked a little bit about monitoring and revision cycles. So I don't know if any of you would like to start with some reflections on that question. Thank you.
Hello. In Spanish case, it's quite easy because we have a binding governance regulation at EU level. So it's 2 years we have to review all the targets and monitor the energy balances to check if we are in the intermediate goals. If we are achieving these intermediate goals. So it's 2 years. We have to share all the information that the assumptions that we have collected in the construction of the scenarios, and we have to evaluate the results. And if the assessment is in some parts is not correct, or is not achieving the intermediate goals to get to 2030 goals or 2050 goals, we have to propose additional measures to get there, and new or more ambitious policies.
Thank you so much. I don't know, Gabriel or Ali, if you want to add. Yes.
For Guatemala, with the energy statics, I'm do the responsibility to generate this information and complete monitoring and constant meeting with all the sector for this reportation and public these statistics.
Thank you for the question. For Egypt, we have like institutional framework for having all this information together to be collected, analyzed, and having new visions from this analysis. We have technical committees like the Supreme Council of Energy, which is gather the technical capacities from Ministry of Electricity and Renewable Energy and Ministry of Petroleum. And this Supreme Council, in some part, have the economic ministries, like the Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Environment. All these ministries collaborate together in order to revise the national targets and the plans every 2 years. Moreover, we have the National Climate Change Council, which also is aligning with with its processes with the Supreme Council of Energy, and all these plans are every year are revised and raised together to the Prime Minister in order to have any new commitments or amendments to our plans.
Thank you so much. I think we're right now on time. Thanks so much for the question. Thank you so much for the panelists. I think this comes in a very interesting moment. We have a year on which countries were presenting their new NDCs. Countries have already a lot of work advanced on long-term low emission development strategy and energy scenarios. So it has been a year of testing a lot of what actually alignment looks in practice. And I think still a lot of lessons will be distilled for what's been happening this year and still happening in the countries. And we really believe that a lot of these elements on coordination, alignment, and policy coherence, as mentioned already by you, the panelists as well, will be an essential element also to move into implementation. So there is already a laying ground in the countries, a lot of work done to move into implementation, but a conversation that we hope we can continue to have. But please, let's thank the panelists, and with that, we close this session.
Thank you, Marcela, for this excellent moderation and a very productive discussion. Now we will be taking a family photo just outside the room, and then we will break for coffee, and we meet here 10 minutes before noon. All right, see you outside for the family photo. Thank you, everyone.